Hello everybody, I'm a bit late today. So I've been on lots and lots of Zooms today, so I'm a bit late, but I haven't forgotten. And I'm so glad you're enjoying it. I think one of the things this makes me think about, and it was something that Tiggy brought up actually, was how sad it was that Stella had such a sore leg. And it makes me wonder how many other elephants are out there in the world that are still being treated badly like that. So let's see what happens now. Mac and George are chatting while George cleans one of my windows. George, Mac says, frowning, there's something wrong with the parking lot. George sighs. Oh, I'll take a look as soon as I'm done with this window. What's the problem? Well, there's cars in it. That's what's wrong. Cars, George. Mac starts to smile. I think things are actually starting to pick up a bit. It's got to be the billboard. People see the baby elephant and they just have to stop and spend their hard-earned cash. Oh, I hope so. We could sure do with the business, George says. Mac's right. I have noticed more visitors coming since he and George added the picture of Ruby to the sign. People crowd around Ruby and Stella's domain, oohing and ahhing at the sight of such a titsy tiny little elephant. I gaze out at the huge sign that makes humans stop and spend their hard-earned cash. I have to admit that that picture of Ruby is rather cute, even if she doesn't look like a real elephant. I wonder if Mac could add a little red hat and a curly tail to the picture of me. Then I'd look cute too, and maybe more visitors would stop at my domain. And maybe they might go ooh and ah to me like they do to Ruby. Ivan, tell me another joke, please, Ruby begs after the 2 o'clock show. I think I may have run out of jokes, I say. Oh, then tell me a story then about Stella sleeping and there's nothing to do. I tap my chin. I'm trying to think hard, but when I gaze up at the food court skylight, I'm mesmerised by the elephant-coloured clouds galloping past. Do you sometimes do that? I love doing that, looking up at the clouds and seeing all the amazing things you can see in it. My mum used to say, that's my imagination. But Ruby taps her foot impatiently. I know. I'll tell you a story, a real, live, true story. Okay, what's it about? Guess what? It's all about me. It's about me and how I fell into a hole, a really big hole, and humans dug me out. Bob pricks up his ears and joins me over the window. Oh, I always enjoy a good digging story, he says. Guess what? It was a hole, a really big hole, and it was full of water near my village, Ruby says. I don't know why humans make holes. Anyway, I was there looking for food and my family was there with me, but I wandered off and I got lost and went too close to the village. I was so scared and then I fell into the hole. Of course you were. I would have been scared too. Oh, me too, and I really like holes. The hole was huge. Ruby pokes her trunk out through the bars and makes a big circle in the air. And guess what? She doesn't wait for the answer. The water was all the way up to my neck and I was sure I was going to die. Oh, I shudder. Well, what happened next? I asked. I'll tell you what happened, Bob says darkly. They captured her and put her in a box and shipped her off, and here she is, just like they did with Stella. He pauses and scratches an ear. Humans. I think rats have bigger hearts. Roaches have kinder souls. Flies have... No, Bob, Ruby interrupts. You're wrong. These humans helped me. When they saw I was trapped, they grabbed ropes and they made loops around my neck and my tummy, and the whole entire village helped, even the little kids and grandmas and grandpas, and they all pulled and pulled. Ruby stops. Her lashes are all wet, and I know that she must be remembering all the terrible feelings from that day. And they actually saved me, she finishes in a whisper. Bob blinks. They saved you? He repeats. When I was finally out, everyone cheered, and the children fed me fruit. Then all those humans led me back to my family, and it took a whole day for them to find them. No way, Bob says, still doubtful. It's true! Every single word, Bob. Oh, I don't believe you. Come on, Bob, of course it's true. If Ruby says it's true, it's true. Oh, I've heard rescue stories like that before. It's Stella's Oh, sorry. I've heard rescue stories like that before. It's Stella's voice, and she sounds very sad, and slowly she makes her way over to Ruby. Humans can surprise you sometimes, an unpredictable species. Bob still looks unconvinced. But Ruby's here now. If humans are so swell, who did that to her? I look at Bob with a grumpy look. Sometimes he doesn't know when to keep quiet. Ruby swallows, and I'm afraid she's actually going to cry, but when she speaks, her voice is actually quite strong. Bad humans killed my family, and bad humans sent me here, but that day in the hole, it was the humans who saved me. Those humans were actually good. Oh, it doesn't make any sense, Bob says. I just don't understand them, and I never will. You're not alone, says Stella. And I just sit there and look back up into the clouds and try to imagine what they're looking like. You know, Stella's foot hurts too much for her to do any hard tricks for the 2 o'clock show. Instead, Mac pulls her limping onto the ring where she tracks a circle in the sawdust. Ruby clings to her like a shadow. Ruby's eyes go really wide when Snicker jumps up on Stella's back and then leaps onto her head. At the 4 o'clock show, Stella can only get as far as the entrance to the ring, and Ruby refuses to leave her side. At the 7 o'clock show, Stella stays in her domain, and when Mac comes for Ruby, Stella whispers something in her ear, and Ruby looks at her pleadingly, but after a moment she follows Mac into the ring. Poor old Ruby, she stands all alone. The bright lights make her blink, and she flaps her ears, and she makes a little tiny trumpet sound, which is so cute. The humans actually stop eating their popcorn and go, "Ah," and then they start to clap, and then Ruby's a hit all of a sudden. I really don't know whether to be happy or sad. When Julia arrives after the show, she brings 3 thick books, 1 pencil, and something she calls magic markers. "Here, Ivan," she says, and she slides 2 magic markers and a piece of paper into my domain. I like the sundown colours, red and purple, but I don't feel like colouring because I'm really worried about Stella, and all evening she's been really quiet. And you know what? She hasn't even eaten any of her dinner. Julia actually looks and follows my gaze. "Where is Stella anyway?" she asks, and she goes to Stella's gate, and Ruby puts her trunk out and Julia pats it. "Hi, baby. Is Stella all right?" Stella is lying in a pile of dirty hay, and her breath is not very good. She seems to be really trying hard to breathe. "Dad, could you come here a minute?" Julia calls. George sets aside his mop. "Dad, I don't think she's okay," Julia said. "Look at the way she's breathing. I think we need to call Mac. I think there's something really wrong." "He must know about her. He always knows. But he needs to call a vet even if it costs a lot of money. Please, Dad, will you call the vet?" George gazes at Stella. He puts his hands on his hip and he decides to call Mac. I can't really hear all his words, but I can see George's lips tighten as if he's really cross. Gorilla expressions and human expressions are actually a lot alike. "Max says the vet's coming in the morning if Stella's not any better. He says it's not going to let her die. He's not going to let her die on him, not after all the money he's put into her." George strokes Julia's hair. "She'll be all right. She's a tough old girl." Julia actually sits by Stella's domain until it's time to go home. She actually doesn't do her homework. She doesn't even draw. My domain gleams with moonlight when I awake to the sound of Stella's calls. "Ivan," Stella says in a hoarse whisper. "Ivan." I'm here, Stella. I sit up abruptly and Bob topples off my stomach. I run to a window and I can see Ruby next to Stella sleeping soundly. Ivan, I want you to promise me something, Stella says. Oh, anything, Stella. I've never asked for a promise before because promises are forever, and forever is an unusually long time, especially if you're in a cage. It's not a cage, it's a domain, Stella. Okay, a domain then. I straighten to my full height. I promise, Stella, and I say it in a really strong voice. But you haven't heard what I'm asking yet, she says, and she closes her eyes for a moment and her great chest shudders. Well, I'm still going to promise anyway. Stella doesn't say anything for a long time. Never mind. I don't know what I was thinking. The pain is making me all confused. Ruby stirs. Her trunk moves as if she's reaching for something that isn't there. When I say the words, they are a surprise to me. I know what you want me to do, Stella. You want me to take care of Ruby. Stella nods. And then her poor foot must be really sore because her eyes go all squinty. If she could have a life that's different from mine, she needs a safe place, Ivan, not... I know, you don't really want her to be here. It would be easier to promise stop eating or to stop breathing or to stop being a gorilla. I promise, Stella, I say. I promise it on my word as a silverback that I will look after our Stella. Before Mac, before Bob, even before Ruby, I know that Stella's gone. I know it the way you know that summer is over and winter is on its way. I just know. Stella once teased me that elephants are superior because they feel more joy and more grief than apes. Your gorilla heart are made of ice, Ivan, she said, her eyes glittering. Ours are made of fire. Right now, I would give all the yogurt raisins in all the world for a heart made of ice. Bob heard from a rat, a reliable source, that they actually took Stella's body and put it in a big garbage truck. And it took 5 men and a forklift to do it. I will really miss my Stella. So our poor Stella has gone to fly high with all the other wonderful elephants that are able to be in a beautiful jungle somewhere special. So my darling people, I know it's a bit sad, but there's also some great excitement that's going to happen soon. So watch out for the new adventure. So until then, my lovelies, sleep tight. Heaps of love.